Hey, good morning. It is Sunday and a very happy Sunday for everyone as we kick off 88, going into our 89th year of cannabis prohibition in the United States of America. What a day to be alive. Let's jump into the rotation.
Oh, shit. I wasn't there.
My bad. I cut that one short. You know how it goes.
No, you're good. You're good. I'm quick with it. I just need to not be obvious when I'm not ready.
Well, hey, like I just said, 88 years, nearly 9 decades of cannabis prohibition. And I mean, just 9 decades of lies from the government, from think tanks, from medical associations, from politicians. I mean, since the Marijuana Tax Act was passed in 1937 with no legislative debate and, staunch objections from the American Medical Association over the false claims that cannabis use induces violence, insanity, even death, here we are. And we've witnessed firsthand these tragic consequences of failed policy. We've seen the denial of medical cannabis access to people who need it. We've seen the arrest of over 30 million Americans for violating marijuana laws and failures of prohibition that are no longer matters of public debate. And that's why 9 out of 10 Americans no longer support the federal government's blanket criminalization of cannabis. And 70% of adults say that marijuana should be legal. And, that's something that NORML has fought for since 1970. We fought to expose prohibitionist lies, to end marijuana prohibition. And NORML's doing a great fucking job. I mean, 24 states have legalized marijuana for adult use. Over a dozen more permit medical cannabis access. We're up to 40 now, with Texas finally expanding its medical system. And public support for legalization is at an all-time high, thanks largely in part to NORML's efforts over the 70s, 80s, 90s, and continuous into the new millennium. And people, I was reading just most recently, even the countries that have very harsh cannabis laws, like Japan, came back with studies saying cannabis is not a gateway drug. So to see politicians, whether Republican or Democrat, sit up there and continue to spout these bullshit lines, to see CNN and other major outlets like the New York Times post bullshit stories that pose as medical stories is really disheartening. And right now, we actually see in recent months a rollback from lawmakers from Texas all the way up to Ohio to the halls of Congress. I mean, they're launching a full court press to roll back all the legislative gains that we have. And so I think it's fitting for us to really re-examine where we are as we head into this fall and start the process of a whole nother year in legislative cycle as we head into a 2026 election year where there's going to be seats up for grabs. Right now, there's a special election going on in the city of Tampa for right there in Ybor City for the seat that represents District 5 with a dozen candidates for a special election that's going to be held here shortly. So there's a lot to be said over who sits in what seats and how policy gets made. And it's up to we, the people, to actually take an active role in doing that. And, there have been people who I've met over the course of the past decade who have done amazing things in this space, in trying to bring people together, in trying to mobilize folks to start businesses in cannabis industry, to speak up for the small business owner. And I'm glad that we have one of those guests today in Pete Sessa. And Pete, it's good to see you, man. How you doing?
Good, man. It's good to see you too, Chris. How you doing?
All right, man. Here in DC, trying to stay cool because not only is it hot outside, but I'm always 500 degrees at these shitty politicians.
I'm sorry, Kano. Can you just introduce him again? I wasn't ready again.
Yeah. Our special guest today, of course, is Pete Sessa, who is the founder of the Florida Cannabis Coalition. All rounds of applause. And Pete, you recently expanded into the psychedelic space as well. with your event Cannadelic. I know you've had some successful ones, in South Florida recently, and so we're glad to have you on the show. Thanks for jumping in the rotation with us.
Oh, thanks for having me. I definitely miss being behind the microphone. I was telling Carlos, so I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. I first met you when Carlos started working over at Common Bond and with the Florida Cannabis Coalition, and I was just thankful that you gave. At the time, we were Central Florida Normal, but you gave our local chapter a home there in the office and gave us an opportunity to get started. And so I'll forever be grateful to you for that. And I just want to say thank you for that and that contribution to the movement. A lot of folks may not know that, but you've been on the ground level with us since the get-go, and we really do appreciate the support.
And speaking about that event, I remember one thing that was really, really freaking cool about that event is that you had everybody kind of coming together to fight for legalization. And I remember like going up to you at one point, like at the end of the event, Cano, and you were like, "Oh, just a bunch of libertarians and Democrats talking about how we want legal weed." You know what I mean? Like there was, and this was a big topic, and I think this goes into what you're talking about before, where like weed legalization is like it's not a partisan issue anymore. And we get constantly, dude, you see on our TikTok, it's nothing but like conservatives calling us like libtards and saying like we're doing the wrong things and stuff like that. And it just happens quite a lot. And I don't know, how do we get back to, a bunch of like bipartisan people in a room just fighting for legalization?
Well, Carlos, I think kind of the part of the movement that's going on now, especially on the Republican side of things, leans a little more libertarian.
Yeah.
So it leans a little more, you can't tell me what I can put in my body and, that kind of stuff. So I think there's some hope there.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, it's the same people that don't like want to watch this podcast, or at least they watch this podcast just to like call us libtards or something. I don't know. I don't know what it is. It's, like I think it's obvious at this point that there is a very Democrat focus, very liberal focus on this podcast, right? You got Cano over there. Cano's basically communist.
I'm not a communist, Carlos. I just dressed up for Halloween.
I was known for kind of leaning more towards like right style politics for a while now, but now I'm full blown left. Gary's MSNBC, like if he doesn't get his MSNBC, he's a cranky guy. So I mean we have some sort of stench that's just liberal. Like I think there's got to be some sort of like libertarian car wash or something.
There's it's because of the perception. It's your perception. It's the perception of how you guys come across. If you had Ben Shapiro saying the same things, you would get the opposite reaction.
Yeah, I guess so. I don't know, but that is a big thing. Like I mean, not so much. I wouldn't say so much the MAGA movement, but the Maha movement, the Robert Kennedy guys are much more libertarian. Like they want to ban certain poisons or whatever out of our food, but like it's pretty much like
I don't disagree with that. I don't disagree with that. I see. I felt bad selling snow cones at Dab Day when I looked at the ingredients of the syrup. I was like, I'm just selling blue and red to people, and they're buying it up. It's our most successul fucking fundraiser we've had in a while. People love their poisons, especially when it's hot. But you see the rates of autism, you see the rates of cancer. Hell, I was reading today. There's a member of Congress who was putting Starbucks on blast because the pumpkin spice lattes have no pumpkin in them, and they're found to have ammonia as an active ingredient. So, I mean, it's like, what the fuck are we really consuming? I mean, it seems like the eugenists have been able to put their agenda into our fucking food supply. Well, I remember when I was getting my MPA at USF, the professor said, Chris, if you want to make money with this degree, go work for the FDA. And I was like, why? Mm-hmm. He said, because the same companies that you regulate, that you're going to get paid $6 figures to regulate, are going to pay you millions of dollars to write white papers saying that their products are safe, and they're going to use your expertise and your credentials as a way to consider it the truth. And that just blew my fucking mind. And that's really where we're at as a society, is that the safeguards that we've put in place as an American society, the bureaucracy we've built, no longer protects us. It just rubber stamps whatever campaign donor is donating to that member of Congress. And those members of Congress and even the executive branch have control over the budgets of these various agencies. And we've seen it most recently with Doge. You know, there's no government efficiency. There's no money that's been saved with that. But what we did see is that the 72 plus investigations Elon Musk had and the agencies regulating them have been gutted. What we do see is federal workers no longer having union protections. So when we talk about how the middle class in this country was built, and you hear these stories about taking America back to a greater time, the golden era, those were times where union membership was in the 50 percentile. Those were times when the tax rate on billionaires, they didn't exist because they were forced to put their money back into the business and back into wages. And you know, in the grand scheme of things, you know, you mentioned sometimes I might come off as a communist, but I just think that it doesn't make any fucking sense that we have credit scores and we're paying ridiculous amounts in rent and folks can't afford to get mortgages, and somehow people are still getting richer and poor people are getting poorer, and we're just seeing the wealth transfer. And on top of all that, I can't fucking smoke weed to take my anxiety away. Like, what kind of fucking country is this? Freedom my ass, you know?
And you know, I do want to point out too, like I've gotten on top, like I've said on this show before, that it's not a partisan issue. Both Republicans, both Democrats want legal weed. However, yes, it seems to be partisan within the legislature, where a lot of Republicans don't want that when they're like, as far as lawmakers are concerned.
Yeah.
But you know, fighting for these hemp bills, dude, it's definitely seemed like both sides don't want it. You know, we've had you know, I'll call them out, Rusan and Osgood and all those legislators here in Florida, those senators that are liberal, you know, very much liberal politicians, but they still fall for gateway theory, and they still feel that like marijuana is poisoning the streets. And
well, you know, with all due respect to Osgood and Rusan, you just named two crackheads who are against weed. And frankly, I could give two shits about their highfalutin opinion because they smoke crack. And I'm sorry, but I'm not going to take fucking drug policy advice from crackheads.
To be fair, they don't smoke crack anymore.
Okay, well, as someone who's been to rehab, I can tell you, once a crackhead, always a crackhead. But, you know, they're in recovery. So, you know, shout out to their sobriety. But you don't get to fucking dictate to me that I can't smoke weed when you willing to hit the glass pipe like that. Kiss my ass.
To be fair, Rusan has adopted medical marijuana.
Well, yeah, when you get ass cancer, you kind of end up on the medical marijuana side of things. You know, I'm not saying it's karma. I'm saying that the universe has a sense of humor, and people tend to change their tune when all of a sudden they're sick and they need access to this. Now all of a sudden you're a champion, which is great, but I still can't walk into your shop and say bomb because of him.
All right, calm down.
I'm sorry. I get tuned up because motherfucking crackheads get to tell me I can't smoke weed.
I do need to make one point though, because he does do a lot of Democrat and name only things. He's very excited for us to come into his office to talk to his aides. Maybe even give us 5 minutes, because, you know, I've heard him before. He's like, oh, if you drive up to Tallahassee, that's a hard drive. You should come in and speak to me for a little bit. But that's all it comes to. We talk to him, you know, and he says, okay. And then, you know, we leave, and then he goes and he votes against our issue. So, you know, you have a right to be pissed off, but, you know, take it easy there.
Sorry. I just get tuned up. It's frustrating because we're in a state where 20 grams or more will get you a felony. Yeah. You know, and that's just ludicrous. That you could go to jail for having less than an ounce for 5 years in the state of Florida, and even if you don't, you could get slapped with, you know, tens of thousands of dollars in court costs and have to go to rehab. And the most embarrassing thing in the world is to sit there, just like Dave Chappelle and Half Baked, and say, I'm addicted to marijuana. in a room full of people who are like, well, have you ever sucked a dick for marijuana? You're not an addict. Get the fuck out of here. And I'm like, but I'm court ordered to be here. I can't do nothing about it. You know?
Have you ever gone on to the website marijuanaanonymous.com? This is an actual group.
Oh my God.
This is an actual group. All right. And it's very much like Alcoholics Anonymous. They just take the word alcohol, they put in marijuana, but you look for meetings and it's like only in like one part of the state. Like it doesn't seem to be not the state, the country. I think it's like in Phoenix, Arizona. And like it doesn't seem to be spreading, it doesn't seem to be catching on very well.
If I went to a group called Marijuana Anonymous, I'd be looking for a new plug.
I thought it was like a satire site.
It was like these guys suck dick for your coke.
But you know, getting a little bit off a topic, and I want to go back to our guest Pete, who's definitely you know, taking a role here in Florida. Pete, what really sparked you into saying, you know what, I want to get into cannabis, you know, because you've done some awesome shit with marketing and communications. You work with the Grammys, you know, you help put on with do stuff for the Super Bowl. So like, what makes a person go, you know what, fuck it, I want to get into the Florida cannabis industry. I want to get into something at the ground level.
Well, honestly, it was kind of serendipitous. First of all, I was born on 4/20. That's my birthday, right? So I kind of had to do this, right? I had no real choice. And then, you know, when I was a kid, like in '93, I went to something called the Pot Parade in New York City, and
Cool.
Cypress Hill played. Like you start in Washington Square Park, and then you march up Fifth Avenue to Central Park. And the way they got you to march up Fifth Avenue to Central Park was to tell you that there was going to be a helicopter on the Great Lawn of Central Park dropping joints out of it. So that's how you get a bunch of people that love weed to march up to Central Park. So that was my first experience with activism. And then I got my, you know, my corporate gig, you know, the Westwood One gig, the marketing gigs and stuff. I actually, it's funny you mentioned the food earlier. One of the reasons that I left that career is because I got really disillusioned with what I was doing. I was helping market food, right? I was a lot of the stuff that I worked with was, you know, Procter and Gamble, Nestle. It was actually a Nestle campaign I was working on where for drumsticks, and you can't call them ice cream. You have to call them an ice creamy treat because technically it is not ice cream. And I was like, I'm done with this. Like, and my son had just been born, and I was like, I'm done with this. I can't put this evil out into the world anymore. I'm going to go and do ethical marketing and move to Florida. And that was really hard. Getting into ethical marketing was really hard. But luckily, my brother knew this guy, this eccentric guy who had just sold his company, his telecom company, Tom Quigley. And Tom Quigley wanted to start a cannabis company. And we decided, let's start the Florida Cannabis Coalition here in Florida, take, you know, kind of my expertise and put it to use for good. So now I'm actually able to do stuff, tap into that marketing stuff, tap into, you know, all of the advertising and stuff that I know that I all figured out while I was taking mushrooms, by the way. And I can do good with it. You know, I can help people. I can have a purpose as opposed to just putting advertising out there. So that's really why, you know, how I got into this. And I am incredibly, incredibly blessed to have met Tom, to have met Carlos and you, Chris, and everybody in this community. And I feel incredibly blessed to be able to do what I do and help people and, like, you know, go to sleep at night going, I'm doing something that actually helps rather than hurts.
Okay, do me a favor. You kind of brushed over it, right? You came up with what on mushrooms?
Oh, my figured out marketing and advertising.
You figured out marketing and advertising. Can you go into that? A lot of people. So just a little background about me and Pete. I actually used to work for Florida Cannabis Coalition. I worked directly underneath Pete. So
directly underneath.
Oh God. But well, Pete was my fucking boss.
That was a lot of hair ago.
And
a lot of black hair for me too.
Well, Pete showed me how to, I had education in marketing. I had, education in business, but Pete showed me a lot of like, how to write a press release properly, how to tailor a message, things like that. And I'm really interested in hearing what you have to say because I've done mushrooms and I haven't thought much about marketing. Yeah, I'm interested to hear how you figured out marketing on mushrooms.
Well, it was honestly very, very specific, right? So I was in college and my friend DJ's house, we were all sitting in the living room and we decided to take mushrooms. I used to sell weed in college, so I used to trade it with the mushroom people and get a lot of mushrooms.
Right.
And we had this little 13-inch TV and it was a big room and the TV is all the way on the other side of the room. I can't even believe we could see it. Like today TVs are enormous. Like I can't imagine watching this now. But we took mushrooms and I'm sitting in the chair and we're literally watching TV. I do not remember what we were watching, but it had commercials. And all of a sudden I started like seeing the matrix through the commercials. So what that means is like, instead of seeing what they're actually saying on the commercial, I was seeing what they want you to believe, like their positioning statements, like, oh, they're doing this because they want you to believe this. Oh, they're using this shot to get you to think this. Oh, and all of a sudden, in those couple of hours, 2 or 3 hours I was watching TV, all of this made perfect sense. I was like, this is so easy. I can't believe I've been, exposed to this and been susceptible to this for so long. I know how to do this. I can do this. This is much easier than making a movie, which is what I was trying to do at the time. And that was it.
You said you were in college at the time?
Yeah. I was in
what were you studying?
Communications.
So, I mean, you weren't necessarily studying marketing per se.
Well, I was actually. I was in an advertising class, a communications class, a marketing class, and those classes taught me nothing. Eating mushrooms and watching TV taught me everything.
I hear you. Those classes taught me nothing too.
I like the whole metaphor of seeing through the matrix. I mean, it's like putting on the glasses and they live and seeing what they really want you to see.
That's exactly true.
I just wanted to go back to one quick thing you mentioned about trading cannabis for shrooms. What's the exchange rate on shrooms to weed? We're just curious for market value.
Dude, I wish I could remember, man. I used to sell Mexican brick weed, right? So I used to get these 10-pound bricks, and out of that 10 pounds, you'd get like 2.5 ounces of seeds, right? You get a shit ton of stems. You have to steam them apart. They were so solid. You had to steam them apart. And I was the worst weed dealer or the best weed dealer, depending on, I was the worst weed dealer for me because I kept track of no money, no inventory, nothing. I just sold it and gave it away. But if you were my customer, you got a lot of weed real cheap. I used to have a bowl on my table in my living room in college, and we had an open door policy. People would just come in, and I would come home and I'd find someone sitting on my couch smoking. What's up? I don't know who it is. We just had people coming in and out. There was always a bowl there for people to smoke. It was just my thing, it was my thing. And then even in my corporate career, I was always the weed guy. I walked into a Christmas party once after just smoking and walked right smack into my CEO, who was like, "What's up, Sessa?" I'm like looking at him with red eyes. I'm like, fuck, of course I walked right into him. But I was, I was head of marketing. I was allowed to be creative and, and all that shit. So I was always like the weed guy. And yeah, that's how I ended up here.
When you were talking about ethical marketing earlier, you're basically saying that you started just kind of promoting cannabis, right?
Well, I tried to start my own marketing company where I could pick and choose my clients, and my clients would be people that I agreed with their ethics, right? Their values. I don't know if you've tried to start a marketing agency, but try getting any clients let alone clients you agree with, right? So that was kind of a rude awakening. I was like, oh, people are going to come to me because I know what I'm doing. And this is, almost 15 years ago. It's like 12, 13 years ago. So no, 14 years ago. So it was marketing was a little different. You didn't have all, a lot of the influencers and that stuff going on. But I stumbled into it. My brother was like, "Hey, my friend is starting a cannabis company. You like weed, don't you? He needs a marketing guy. You guys should meet up." And then I met Tom at Starbucks, and it was like, that's it.
How long ago was that?
That was February of 2014.
2014. So 11 years ago.
Yeah.
How has marketing cannabis changed since then?
There is marketing for cannabis now. There was no like.
There was nothing back then.
No, well, I mean, not really. No, I mean it was at least not in this state.
Probably had like a Seth Rogen movie, or like that. That probably was the only thing that like.
It was all very traditional.
Cannabis, right?
Yeah, and it was all traditional, like billboards out west. Like really kind of traditional. There wasn't really a lot, I think, going on at the time. But as legalization started to really take hold in a lot of different markets, then you started seeing it get much more sophisticated. A lot of, at first it was a lot of original content and, like original stuff not paid, right? Mm-hmm. So that was a really big deal. So with my podcast, what we found was a gap in the marketing strategies of all of the MMTCs in Florida. They have all these advertising restrictions, right? So they can't advertise on social media. They can't advertise in a whole bunch of places. They can't even put up billboards. Mm-hmm. So through podcast and creating content like that, it gives them a platform that we can sample products and really kind of make it part of the narrative. They call it influencers now, but back in the 50s it was called product placement. It's nothing new. Edward R. Murrow had a Camel ashtray on his desk. I mean, that's kind of what it is. I don't know why you don't have more branded shit on this set. You should have some more stuff back here.
I guess I should. Yeah,
you should. You should be. Where's your cup? You need like a cup that's branded or something.
There's a Chillum potted plant right in the window there.
Yeah, I had it. I had it when we were. Oh shit! I had it when we were focused in on you. If I could get that back there.
I'm gonna put my cup in the shot. Let me get my less gloomy, more shroomy sticker.
So I left Florida Cannabis Coalition. I think it was 2018, maybe like the end of 2017. Mm-hmm. And when I had left, it was still straight up cannabis. Everything was cannabis, right? And then you sooner or later you adopted the whole psychedelic side of things into Florida Cannabis Coalition, and became Cannadelic, which is an awesome name. Awesome name.
It's like Benifer.
Bradgelina. Yeah, like what was like, I know you had this affinity with mushrooms or whatever, going from the get-go, but like what kind of like sparked putting in, cannabis is hard enough to promote, you know what I mean? Why did you decide that it was worthwhile to add psychedelics into the mix?
It actually was pretty scary.
And yeah, you were doing it before anybody else, really.
Yeah, and it was kind of scary because it completely blew up like the business model that Cannabis Coalition was built on. But I did have this affinity for mushrooms. As a matter of fact, after that experience, I forgot to say before, after that experience, I started handing out mushrooms to everybody that I could find. I would go to the bars in college, and I had this big trench coat, and I would have these deep pockets, and I would have mushrooms in my pockets, and I would grab a handful, and I'd give them to a couple people, I'd eat some, and I'd give them more people, I'd eat some. And who knew what I was doing? I was going to bars, and how many alcoholics did I prevent by giving people mushrooms at a bar?
Pete was that guy the Ninja Turtles warned us about, who was handing out free drugs.
And oddly enough, putting them on pizza. So why incorporate psychedelics? So it was a slow kind of process because we worked with Chaz, right? Chaz Colavito, who does the Get Cherried events now. He was a big advocate for wanting to incorporate mushrooms or incorporate psychedelics into the events. And I was extremely hesitant to do that because I didn't want to scare away.
Yeah, you think
cannabis people.
about Chaz. I mean, I remember Chaz coming in as an intern, and he came like his qualifications to be an intern was that he was SSDP,
Yeah, yeah.
which is overarching sensible drug policy, not just cannabis.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
So Chaz was the first person to mention we should incorporate psychedelics. He was also mentioning that we should incorporate burlesque, and I was like, I don't get it. I don't know. But what I love is that Chaz does his events and he does burlesque at his events, and I love that he wanted to do it that bad that he just did it on his own, right? So Chaz was the first, and then these guys out from Arizona, the MITA guys that we were talking to, me and Tom. I forgot what MITA stands for. Honestly, it's like marijuana something, but they were big advocates for psychedelics as well. So Tom and them were saying, you should, think about adding psychedelics to this. And then COVID happened, right? And during COVID, the emphasis on mental health became really, really prominent. So in my personal life, there were some things going on with psychedelics and mental health, and met a couple of people that were kind of entrenched in the psychedelic space. So the first Cannadelic was kind of born out of necessity, because some other stuff wasn't working out. So the event was launched, and it was nerve-wracking, to say the least. I thought I was going to lose all the MMTCs, all the cannabis people. And originally the event was called the FLMJ Expo because it was so, innocuous. Like nobody could, it doesn't really mean anything, right? So then I talked to a guy named Zappy Zappelin, who's a really good marketer. And he said, you need to put psychedelics in the title. And I said, you're absolutely right. Since we're doing it anyway, let's do full force. So immediately I was like, Cannadelic or psychobis? I don't know why. I just, this stupid Benifer thing was in my head. So obviously, as soon as you say it out loud, you're like, Cannadelic. And I looked it up, and nobody had it. It was a band in Australia, was the only Cannadelic that was out there. Now I just learned that the website cannadelic.com is going for like $400,000 or something.
Oh wow,
it's ridiculous. It wasn't back then. It was like 20,000.
Wow.
And I was like, oh, maybe you can save up and get it, but no. So I got all the other URLs for Cannadelic. But the thing that happened that was really crazy is that once it was announced, once people started seeing that psychedelics were part of it, all the cannabis people had this psychedelic side to them, businesses, experiences, and everybody wanted to talk about it. So there were speakers coming in from everywhere that just wanted to talk about their psychedelic experience or the psychedelic side to their business. And I think the first event had 112 speakers over 2 days. I had panels with 8 people on them. Like, that's how many people wanted to speak. And I have a hard time saying no to basically anything. So I let everybody come and speak. And it was actually really amazing to see that kind of evolution and to see everybody come together. And then the vibe that it creates when you add psychedelics into an event is something completely unexpected and unplanned. And it's what I'm calling now radical human connection, because I have never seen anything like it in any other event that I've ever been to.
There we go. We got me back in the frame.
Yes, Carlos.
Yeah, dude, I've been to a couple Cannadelics. You've been nice enough to have us chill them and learn Euphoria set up tables there. And it definitely is a completely different vibe than anything else that I've ever been to. Can you and you've had like not just a large quantity of speakers, but you've had quality as well. Can you just kind of go into like some of the speakers you've had and come to the events and kind of what they've gone over?
Yeah, well, the first event, there was a lot of great speakers that came out from the West Coast, right? So we had guys like Philip Wolf come out and talk about cannabis and food pairings. We had a whole bunch of people from the Emerald Cup came out. That first event was really, really grassroots and got a lot of people on that stage talking about things that they haven't had a chance to talk about. And that first event was, there was a little bit of luck involved because, and I hesitate to say luck, honestly, that wasn't the right word, but there was a COVID resurgence happening in the rest of the country. And in Florida, as we all know, what's COVID? Was that a thing? I don't know. So our venue did not get shut down. So all these other events around the country started getting shut down. So people started coming out to Cannadelic. And then once they saw the video from day one, people started coming out for day two. So that's how it blew up to about 8,000 people at the first one. And then that built for the next one. We did one at FIU in the interim. And then for the 2023 event, that's when hooked up with Cynthia again. Remember Cynthia used to work with us back at Common Bond, and she's in PR. And we landed Paul Stamets, Rick Doblin, Nancy Whiteman, Jason Silva from Brain Games, which was a fiasco. But that was one that I wanted to see because I used to watch that show all the time. What was his name? He was the son of Run DMC. I can't remember his name.
I used to watch him in that
JoJo Simmons. Simmons. And yeah, so there was a ton of people. We had some amazing speakers, the guys from Psychedelics today. I actually look back on the old schedules, like the old lineups for the speakers for the panels, and I'm like super impressed. Like looking at it now, I'm like, wow, these are really good panels. These are stacked panels, and we need to have this again. So yeah, a lot of great people came out. Paul Stamets talked to a room of 800 people, and he asked the crowd, how many people in here have not taken psychedelic mushrooms? And 3 people raised their hand. And he said that was the most amount of people he's ever seen in one room together that have taken psychedelic mushrooms.
Wow.
That's heavy.
Yeah, that's really cool.
I actually ran into him and Rick Doblin at Meow Wolf in Denver together. Meow Wolf is like this crazy psychedelic trippy museum in Denver. I think there's one in Vegas too. And they had a after party there for the Psychedelic Science Conference. And there's all sorts of stuff going on. And I walk out and I see Rick Doblin coming this way and Paul Stamets coming this way. And then they meet together and then they're hugging. And I'm like, oh, these are my 2 stars for my 23 event. So started talking to them, and it was just really, really cool.
All right. So what's the future for Cannadelic?
We're expanding a lot of different things. One thing that I'm super excited about now is doing the night markets. So the Cannadelic night market is different than our expos because the expos really focus on education and speakers. That is what drives those events. I know that people love the expo hall and people love our activations like the sound healing, the breath work, the mushroom growing workshops, all of that. But the big expos, for me, it's about the content, it's about the people, it's about getting the message out there. And with the night market, what we're able to do is really focus on the expo side of things and really focus on the vendors and the activations, right? And the music and having fun, right? So it takes a little bit of emphasis off of so much education and learning, puts it more on having more fun and, finding products as well as, learning about yourself, experiencing the breath work, experiencing the mindfulness stuff that we do. We do something called Smoke and Stretch with Dr. Lauren Leva, who it's basically this hot yoga class and you smoke during it. And she has a whole system of how you do it, when you take a hit and all that stuff. And it's really cool. We're actually doing one-offs of that, monthly in St. Pete. So the night market is something I'm really excited about. We did one in March. We had 2,200 people come out for the one in March, and that was over in St. Pete. St. Pete, by the way, is an amazing community for this stuff. It's like I love St. Pete for this. We're trying to bring people that do the events in Miami, who are based in Miami, are vendors. Tell me, when are you doing one in St. Pete? We want to come up to St. Pete. We want to come up to St. Pete. Everybody wants to come up here. So St. Pete is a great, great, great city for this. And we're doing our next night market on August 23rd. So it's about 3 weeks from today. And that's also going to be in St. Pete. We're at a place called St. Pete Calisthenics. And it's also called the Playground, because it's literally like an adult playground. Like there's monkey bars and all sorts of stuff like that there.
Speaking of Chaz, he's holding some events over there.
He is. I think he's doing a monthly event there. And I can't wait to go to that too. And there was another one there last night. The venue is really cool. And what I really like about it is that it really fits our not just our brand, but our whole ethos. Like there's a biohacking studio built into the place, that like they would be a vendor,
The idea of psychedelics, not necessarily for just tripping or getting fucked up, but for some sort of intention. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And cannabis as well. That's like my new thing, is cannabis with intention.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The whole psychedelic wave that we're seeing in resurgence of reconnecting the psychedelics right in recent years really has, from what I've seen, developed a lot of positive public opinion and even political clout, to the point where you see these guys who typically are not pro cannabis but are now politicians that are pro psychedelic in regards to trying to help our veterans recover from the global war on terror and help them readjust. And I just, for some folks have even said they see psychedelics advancing exponentially faster than cannabis reform policy has when it comes to, possibly adopting it as federal policy. So it's interesting to be on the cutting edge of all this, Pete, and the fact that you had the foresight to incorporate psychedelics with the cannabis. One of the things I wanted to go back to, because I went to the National Cannabis Festival in DC a couple weekends ago, and it's very similar to what you talked about with your event. Is that there's a music component, there's panels from wellness and policy experts, there's vendors, and I found it to be awesome, that you could walk into a place, you pay your fee to get in, and then you got all these great vendors out there who have product. They had workshops on how to grow. They had panels on sacred medicine. They had panels on public policy. They had panels on culture. And so I can see from the task and the amount of work that goes into this, it's not easy to pull this off. What are your takeaways from that? When people say, I want to get into this space, or they want to do what you do, what's your biggest challenge and what's your biggest highlight in all of it?
Wow. Yeah. It's not as fun as it looks from the outside, right? So it looks like, wow, this is, you just get to do this and host these cannabis events and stuff. You must just smoke weed all day. Yeah, the event business in and of itself is extremely stressful. Not only is it take a lot of coordination and a lot of organization, things that I do not excel at. I'm good at messaging and stuff, but organization is not my strong suit. Everything is up to the last minute. Vendors wait till the last minute to sign up. I was just charting our ticket sales, and half the ticket sales come in the last 3 days, and 30% of them come in the last day. So it's really hard to gauge, attendance, and it's difficult. Not to mention marketing these events when you have all these restrictions for cannabis and psychedelics, it can be extremely challenging. I've had Instagram pages taken down recently. I had my two of my pages taken down. Luckily, I got them back, and several partners, were taken down, and they got them all back too. But it's challenging. It's extremely challenging, but it's also extremely rewarding. And the rewarding side of it is when you get feedback from people, and the feedback is not like, oh, I love that event. It's, oh my god, that event changed my life. And I'm not making that up. I'm not, honestly, I would never claim that if it wasn't true, but so many people have said that. As a matter of fact, over the last 2 years, I have given up on doing these events multiple times. Things got extremely difficult for me, and I was done. I was like, there's no way I can do this anymore. I'm doing something else and got some other things going. But then every single time I would run into somebody and they would tell me what a profound impact the event had on them, or they're attending the event had on them. And it's almost like, every time I thought it was out, they pull me back in. And this one guy, Nick, I was done, man. I was done doing this. And Nick he recognized me out of nowhere. He's like, "You're the guy that does Cannadelic." And he went on for 20 minutes about what an amazing event it is, and how he was mad that the one in 2024 in January got canceled in Miami. And he was like fuming. He was like, "You need to do another one." And I was like, all right, I guess I'll do another one. And Nick's one of my good friends now. And when things are going really bad, I'm just like, dude, this is all your fault that I'm all this stressed out again. I was done with this business. And then
I've definitely heard of, as somebody who sells products, right? There's been plenty of products that have come through my shelves. Like the drink Breeze apparently was started at a Cannadelic event.
Yeah, that was awesome. Like, we actually interviewed them on stage in Miami, and they told the whole story about how they met. Travis and Aaron met at Cannadelic, and Dennis Walker, the micropreneur, he was involved in hooking them all up together. And Aaron had all the marketing prowess, and Travis was the formulator, and Breeze was born out of the 2023 Cannadelic event.
And I remember when I really wasn't involved in putting together Cannadelic stuff, but when we were doing Florida Cannabis Coalition events, I remember how satisfying the day after the event was. It was just like, this is the least amount, like all of the work really I have to worry about an event 3 months from now,
right?
I don't have to worry about an event next week. And you're like extremely satisfied because everything got put together at the last moment and went well. And, maybe it didn't run smoothly, but it ran, you know what I mean? And people got happy with the event. Like, it was a great success. So I definitely, like, you're talking to somebody that was completely burnt out from events. It was like, fuck this, I'm opening a store.
Right.
So kudos to you, man. You've been sticking with it for 11 years and going strong and providing a good value to the community. So I recognize that more than most people. So
I appreciate that. And it really is a privilege. Like, it really is a blessing to be able to do this. And there's a certain amount of it that is, perseverance and stuff like that. And it's difficult, but it's just, look at what we're able to do. Like, the amount of people that come away from these events changed is just the tip of the iceberg. I used to say this all at our green carpet events, right? Like, my speech at the green carpet events was, everybody here now goes home and talks to all the, their circle of people around their dinner table and stuff. And that's how we make change. That's how we get things legalized, right? And that's what happens. People become evangelists for cannabis and psychedelics because they come to an event and have that experience.
And it definitely seems like the night markets that you're setting up are kind of like, I mean, they serve a lot of the same purpose of the green carpet events, the networking events, where it's just kind of like a little bit more vending, right, and a little bit more of an informal type scenario where like you're really able to go and talk to people, not so much sit there and listen to a speaker, but and that really and the environment is like a night market. It's a little less stuffy than like an
Yeah.
expo. You know what I mean?
And there's something there's something that I wanted to mention about when you talk about networking. So our new slogan is cannabis, psychedelics, and radical human connection. And the reason that radical human connection was added is that adding psychedelics to the event changed the dynamic of the networking and connections that are made at the event. And it was not something that was planned, not something that was expected. But when people come in with this mindset, they talk about set and setting with psychedelics. People come into these events with a mindset that is way more open and less competitive than just going into these cannabis events. And I've heard this from multiple people that have been to both cannabis events, psychedelic events, and cannadelic events, right? So there's this openness, this willingness to connect with people, this I'm looking for something more than just a business partner. There's something that's intangible. I'm still trying to figure out what it is. Maybe part of it is psychedelics themselves, the actual substances. Maybe people are expanding their consciousness while they're there. But I think it's more the mindset. I think it's more people come more open and less looking for what the opportunity is and more looking to connect. And that's not something that was ever planned, expected, or even realized until recently, that this was actually going on, trying to figure out what is this magic that happens. We put all the ingredients together, but it's greater than the sum of its parts. And it's really humbling, really humbling. I'm just like so privileged that happens out of this.
Well, I was actually wondering, because I mean, I get people that come through the shop here, and you get a bunch of different people. Don't get me wrong, but I see a lot of people that come in, and they're like, I just want a small edible, or I just want something small, as far as like hemp is concerned. And then you're like, you try to sell them, so you're like, hey, no mushrooms today. And then the look of fear on their face. It's like, oh God, no, not for me. I can't. I do declare I would never. But do you think maybe there's a certain group of people that have kind of resisted because of the psychedelic aspect?
Yeah, there's definitely some people that are on the that don't want to be involved in the psychedelic side of things, and there actually are some that initially were turned off by it but now are okay with it. And I think it's just the culture shifted a little bit. There's a lot more acceptance of psychedelics now than there was even 3 years ago. And you're having you can even look at the opposite side of things. So we were talking about RFK and the Maha. RFK is anti-cannabis, pro-psychedelics, right? Psychedelics helped him kick his addiction, and now he is pro-psychedelics, wants to have government-funded psychedelic clinics to help people battle addiction. But he's still on the anti-cannabis side of things. That's an interesting dynamic. I'm trying to get him to come down to. We're doing a what's called the Cannadelic Global event in November, which is part of this thing called Global Psychedelic Week. So I'm trying to get RFK to come down for that, because honestly, man, that's where we need to hear where that's going and what that opinion is. And we need to know a little bit more. We need a little more clarity on where that's going. So it's been really kind of interesting to see who's come around, who's kind of resistant. And then, like you were saying, with the customers that come in, people have their preconceived notions about psychedelics, and especially mushrooms. Like, you're going to watch your face melt off. You're going to, LSD, you're going to jump off of a building, right? You're going to jump out of a window. And some people are still in that kind of, the psychedelic reefer madness, right? Where they still feel like, that could happen. And that was like really ingrained in us, so
It's when we first branded as a mushroom dispensary, it was incredible to see the lack of education that came with psychedelics. I mean, there were people coming in and they're like, well, you guys have this they didn't know how to pronounce psilocybin. They didn't really understand how any of this works. And even nowadays, like I somebody comes in asking about the mushrooms, and like typically the first thing I do is like, oh, I'm just wondering what you're looking for. Are you looking for something like a psychedelic trip, or are you looking for a microdose type situation? And a lot of times they're like both. And I'm like, okay, so you have to understand these are two very different sides of the spectrum. You know what I mean? And a lot of people don't understand microdosing does not provide these, doesn't fuck you up at all. People microdose to go to work. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So there's just a complete lack of education as far as psychedelics are concerned. And I think as time goes on and there's more events like Cannadelic, there's more places like Chillum and more companies like Learn Euphoria coming out, with the purpose of educating people. I think we're going to see a lot more clarity as far as that's concerned, and a lot of those stigmas are it's a lot like cannabis. You know what I mean?
Well, you say that, but it's a lot like cannabis, and there's still a huge lack of education around cannabis. I'm still having arguments with people about THCA, how it's not as strong as regular weed. Still.
The only thing I have beef with is when I see MMTCs market their hemp products in a way that's misleading to where it feels like you're getting solid medical marijuana or cannabis. It's like I pay $15 for a pre-roll, and then I look at it and it's like, wait a minute, this is like 30% THCA and point something percent THC, and it's like, I got okey doke. I wanted that gas. And so that's the biggest thing that I have beef with. I know a lot of folks who are legacy market purists don't like either of your business models for both of y'all, right? Like they feel as though like you're marketing booth the folks. But like you said, it's really about education and educating consumers on what they're getting and what they're looking for, and really guiding people who have a strong distrust. We talked a little bit about the propaganda around psychedelics earlier, and part of that is because of the Central Intelligence Agency. Most folks don't realize that the CIA ran a program called MK Ultra for over 20 years, from the 50s through the 70s, which looked at mind control utilizing psychedelics. And so when you say someone took acid and jumped off a bridge, it wasn't the acid that necessarily caused it. It was the fact that they were being suggested into this. They even ran brothels in California where they would lure people to lay with sex workers, and the sex workers would secretly dose people, and they were literally trying to weaponize psychedelics as a way to win the Cold War. And I mean, that's definitely undemocratic. It's definitely something that you think is un-American. And folks can actually read all this stuff, because most of the MK Ultra stuff, which survived the destruction of the documents in the 70s, has actually been declassified. But it's just interesting to see that there is still a level of paranoia around psychedelics when we're actually seeing how they're helping people heal from post-traumatic stress disorder, especially not just veterans, but people who are survivors of sexual assault. And there's a lot to be said of whether it's psilocybin or mescaline or other types of psychedelics like DMT, which is really interesting to see. A lot of these folks. I mean, hell, just to hear Mike Tyson's story, well, he went from killer to this peaceful guy, after the DMT. And you see how people have reinvented themselves afterwards.
I'm not gonna call out the event though, but I did see, and it was somewhat concerning, where like there was an event that I went to that like it was focused specifically on psychedelic businesses. And I think one of the enticing marketing points was pitch your business to investors while they're in a psychedelic state. Well, when they're in a suggestible state. You know, and you know that seems a little bit like abuse there. But we have a question in the comments here, and Mike Thompson actually wanted to ask Pete your thoughts on the legislation constantly wanting to ban events like this. I think he's talking about the hemp bills that are trying to get.
I know what Mike's talking about.
Okay, cool. What is he talking about then?
I understand completely where the question comes from, and it was a tough thing for me because sometimes this is why I don't like government and laws and legislation and all of that. I'd probably be an anarchist if I could. There were, we have this whole, pitting against the hemp industry and the MMTCs and cannabis industry here in Florida for various different reasons. So one of the bills that was proposed would not only have hurt the hemp industry really bad, but would have made my events infinitely more difficult to host and given me a lot more liability on those events. So why would why would I be in favor of something that's against my best interests? To tell you the truth, I think decriminalizing or keeping people out of jail for me is more important than my business model. And I'd be a hypocrite if I said, look, I get to do something ethical and I'm doing something that helps people, and then kind of putting my business before what I feel is helping people more. It's definitely, I don't like it. I don't like that I have to choose those things. I think that bills should be written a little bit better, a lot better. I think the newer ones are coming along that are better. But at the end of the day, I have to look at things in a bigger picture, because this is not just a business, it's a movement, right? And if I feel like it's gonna help people not go to jail, and my business is gonna take a hit from that, that's something that I have to that I'm willing to live with. Now, if it's debatable whether or not it is going to keep people out of jail. That's where I landed on it. That's what I felt. But if you want to debate that point, whether or not it's that part of the legislation is good, that's a fair point. But I can't, in good conscience, put my business interests ahead of what my ethical interests are as an activist.
I hear what you're saying, but I think that I think you're referring to two separate pieces of legislation that are proposed by the same groups.
Okay.
You know what I mean? So like you can very much be against the hemp bills, but pro legalization. You know what I mean?
Right. But the legalization bill, like the Amendment 3, I think put the kibosh on the events, right?
Oh, really? Was that?
No, it was the hemp ban bill that they pushed this session that had an event ban in it. And this is something that is pushing in multiple states. In Maryland, they had a bill for licensing cannabis events that I actually sat in the Senate committee on, and they wanted to ban smoking. Like basically you could just have infused drinks at a cannabis event. And I was just like, why the fuck are we even debating this? Why is this something, so whether it's Republicans or Democrats in control, these shitty bills are being pushed because there's money behind them, because there's people with a financial interest who don't want to see small cannabis businesses or small psychedelic vendors cutting in on the margins of the big investments that they're hedging their bets on. Because right now, MMTCs in Florida are not profitable. They're making their money in the margins. This is why they want to put you out of business, Carlos. It's why they want, Pete not to be able to connect small businesses and new people come together and create businesses at a Cannadelic event so they can they end up cutting into the market share. And that's the sad part around all of it, is it goes back to money. And I see the parallels in Josh Kesselman's recent acquisition of High Times, because High Times for years was on the cutting edge of activism. It gave a space for normal. It gave a space for guerrilla growers, like Cervantes, to really reach people. And then in the 2010s, it went corporate. And it ended up where you could just pay to get whatever you wanted listed online on High Times. And it became a shit show. And the publication kind of went south. And now you have someone who actually cares about it reinvesting. And so I think that goes to what Pete was saying, is you got to care as an activist to address this if you're really going to enjoy making money on the business model. Because if you have a business model for the sake of just making money in the activism space, you're going to lose people. You're going to lose supporters. You got to be an activist first. You got to care about the culture. And I think that's why both you gentlemen have been able to generate a modicum of success. It could be so much more if there weren't so many barriers on the business side that are put up politically. But I give my hat and tip my hat to y'all for continuing to stick with it for over a decade. And Pete, thank you for the space that you've created for us at Normal, and thank you for the space that you're creating for other small businesses and activists to be able to connect and push forward.
So, Chris, I think that what you're saying, it goes way beyond just cannabis, right? And way beyond psychedelics. It goes back to what we were talking about earlier with the food and everything. You have to have a certain amount of ethics that supersedes your profitability or your consumerism or your capitalist goals, right? And that's where we're having kind of an issue. That's where you get all subverting the regulations and the revolving doors of people at the FDA and CEOs of food companies, because it's all about how much money can we make. Don't forget, SEC rules say that you have to make money for your shareholders year over year. Can't just be stagnant. You can't just be, okay, we're going to make X amount every year, and that's our company. No, you got to keep making more, more, more. So the only way to do that in a food industry is to sell more food. Right? Come up and people don't need more food, right? We got plenty. And, some people need.
Me and Keno don't need any more.
In this country, it's about quality of food, not quantity. So that's where you always have to have this line between, your ethics and your and what you want to do as a business. And I think as a country, as a society, that's something we have to deal with. It's very different in Europe, right? People don't work just to make as much money as possible. They can get to a point where they're content. And I think maybe it's because we're a young country. Like, there's a whole bunch of different reasons that, can take up a lot of hours on a podcast. But I think that it's really important that we zoom out a little bit and see that that's not just in this space. That is a big societal problem, that I think is kind of coming to a head nowadays. And I saw that Mike Thompson, commented that he was asking specifically about the event bans. I am not in favor of banning my own events. So I'll just go on the record. I'm not a fan of having more fines put on me if something goes awry at an event. I am a big fan of these events, especially now in this digital age where people are not connecting to each other as human beings. And it's ironic that I say that, because I have like all the social anxiety and I'm not like the biggest talkative kind of social person. But the amount of impact that you get from actually sitting with someone and talking to them and seeing their facial expressions and reading their body language and feeling their energy is something we're missing now. We don't get that as much because we're all on our phones all the time. We're all digital all the time. That's why I came over here to sit next to Carlos, because this is a way better show sitting next to you than it is, in Washington, D.C., like Kano over there. You couldn't come in? You couldn't come up for this?
No, but hearing what you're saying, discussion, like sitting down and discussing ideas, even if it's something that can be very scientific, like cannabis, or how psychedelics work on the brain, or whatever that is, just being in a room with somebody and being able to ask questions and to talk about how these things make you feel and how they make you act. I think that you learn way more than reading a Wikipedia page. You know what I mean?
And this discussion reminds me of that meme. Yeah, we destroyed the planet, but for a short time, we made a whole bunch of money for our shareholders.
Exactly.
And it's like when the dust settles, what is there left, right? Like you said, everything in the modern era is a fugazi. I mean, a strong enough solar flare will take us back to the Stone Age. Human connections is literally what we got. And that is something that the social skills of the newer generation of us as adults, we're losing that human connection. I mean, it's just, I've seen it in my own union organizing, trying to have a conversation with someone. People don't even want to talk to other human beings anymore. Oh, can you just text it to me? It's like, no, man, you're going to have a human conversation today, whether you like it or not. And we're going to talk about why you're getting shitted on in your workplace and why you don't care. And you should. And people and people appreciate it after the fact, but I've had to literally develop leaders, develop humans, and to help people get through social anxiety in order to speak up and be leaders in their workplace. And then that is something that is interesting, because we don't have an education system that values that. Your education system, K through 12, is sit down, shut up, raise your hand if you want to go to the bathroom. Someone gives you a carton of milk. Like Rick Sanchez said, schools are not for smart people.
It's to learn how to conduct yourself in society. When the bell rings, then your day is over. It's all to condition people to work in factories, and we still have that same school system. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. And if a kid is disruptive, what do? They drug him, right? Give him. Oh, he's got ADHD. Let's give him meds and turn him into a zombie.
It's terrible. He's a kid. You mean he doesn't want to sit still in for hours in one place? He must be something wrong with him.
Yeah. It's nuts. So
I mean, society is fucked. Like, let's not.
But this does tie in to wrap it all up. Society's fucked. Psychedelics are a way to branch through it. It's literally. I've heard so many stories of people who have had a psychedelic experience, and it was life-changing. It really felt them. Even people who are non-religious still have a spiritual level experience that changes them in a way where their thought paradigm changes and their view of reality changes, and they decide to do things differently. And sometimes that's what we need. We need a restart. What was that one lady who was she accidentally took 500 doses of LSD, and then she ended up not being depressed anymore after she came out of her trip. And it's like, wow, that's heavy.
She actually had a leg pain that went away. Wow. It was chronic pain, and it disappeared. So it's like this crazy, how is your brain associated with this pain? It's a wild story.
Well, yeah. I just have a question for you guys, and we glossed over it just a moment ago, but I want to take it back to, do you guys really think mushrooms are gonna and psychedelics are gonna be legalized before cannabis? And as the deputy director of an organization that focuses on cannabis legalization, I don't know how I feel about that. You know what I mean?
Oh, I think the clinical models are going to get fast tracked of psychedelics, right? So clinical model meaning you go to an office, kind of like ketamine clinics are today, right? You go into an office, you sit with a psychotherapist, they evaluate you. And if you're determined that, this treatment is for you, then they, give you ketamine, and you go into this, this meditative space, and then you come out of it, and then you do talk therapy.
All based off of models in the 40s that utilized LSD for that.
Right.
I mean, the founder of psychology, Sigmund Freud, said, "Oh, you got issues with your mommy, do cocaine."
He sure did.
Ah, man. Sometimes I do want to go backwards in time.
Well, people don't realize that where acid, LSD was the cure for addiction, the smoking and alcoholism, right? And all of the negative stuff, Kano was talking earlier about the CIA. all of the negative PR around psychedelics came out of that. Came out of, well, basically what they did was, well, we can't really arrest people for being against the Vietnam War. There's nothing illegal about that. So what can we arrest them for? Oh, well, they do these drugs. There we go. And these drugs actually open their minds. It actually makes them not want to kill people. Oh, well, let's make these drugs really bad. And then they start, that's where that all came from. It was the government. Before that, the founder of AA used LSD. You know, like it's there's a profoundly spiritual component to AA, and that comes from the psychedelics that were used by the founders of AA. And it's just amazing to see how you can create a narrative that has no basis in reality and use it, you know, to for your own agenda. And once you kind of see that, you know, like, well, where is that happening elsewhere? You know,
That's a cool tattoo. I'm just checking it out now.
oh, thank you. Phoenix.
He's got some new ink, guys.
It's my Phoenix.
Cano, I know you got a news story that you want to get into, but I think we've chatted long enough. We went a little over time, didn't we? So let's go.
Time?
You know,
It's a podcast.
Yeah, you know, it's guidelines. But let's go ahead. Let's focus the camera on you, Pete.
Oh boy.
And you know, let's talk about what's coming up next with Cannadelic again, and how people can find you and how they can support you.
Oh, well, you know, the best way to find us is on Instagram. So it's at Cannadelic_2025. And if you just put Cannadelic in, there'll be a bunch of Cannadelic pages that come up because I'm protecting myself against getting taken down again. So any of those pages is a great way to find us. You can go to cannadelicnightmarket.com. You want stuff, you want to find out about Night Market. And so Night Market is coming up August 23rd. It's a Saturday. It's in St. Pete. It's going to be a really fun event. I can't wait. Just was at the venue last night. And then in November, we're doing something called Cannadelic Global. Cannadelic Global is going to be part of something called Global Psychedelic Week, which takes place the whole first week of November and incorporates events both in person and online from around the world. And if you go to globalpsychedelicweek.com, you can learn all about it, and you get tickets there, and you get access to all these different conferences, all this different content, and it's stuff from anybody who's anybody in the psychedelic world. Dennis Walker is putting it together along with Milisa. I don't remember how to pronounce her name, but I met her out in Denver. It's going to be, I'm so excited about it because I think something like that can really bring a lot of people into the conversation. And we're hosting our events to close it out on November 9th at Coastal Creative, which is this venue in St. Petersburg that is, we've hosted an event there before. And my stage there, the whole backdrop is this giant LED wall. So, and it's a film studio. That's what they do there. They shoot movies there. So they have 8K cameras, 3 of them trained on the stage. So the content that we're going to get from this event is going to be stellar. It's going to look like professionally shot TED Talks. So one thing with the events is I'm never really happy with the video that comes out of it, except for the one that was done at Coastal Creative. So I'm really psyched to stream out really, really high quality video. And maybe we'll get something that can go viral, something that can really grab people and really get the conversation going to more and more people around the world. So I'm psyched about that. That's November 9th. You can check out cannadelic.global.com for that.
Very cool. And yeah, does that mean it's time for the news, Cano?
It's time for the news.
All right. Let me.
All right, so at the top of the news, let's talk about it. Delaware has begun adult use sales at its existing medical cannabis dispensaries on Friday, August 1st. 28 months after lawmakers finally had approved legislation legalizing the adult use market, consumers aged 21 and older have begun purchasing cannabis products from licensed retailers, obviously the existing MMTCs. Consumers can purchase at approximately a dozen retail locations. You can visit normal.org, read the story a little bit further, and find out what locations are available in Delaware. Regulators have pledged to approve additional licenses to new applicants in the coming months. And Delaware state auditors report estimates that adult use sales will generate $43 million in annual tax revenues. So interesting enough, we'll see how that all shakes out. One of the things I think is important is and Carlos just flashed the news story up there from Normal, is that we're going into our 89th year. Yesterday was 88 years of cannabis prohibition in America since the Marijuana Tax Act was passed. And we've seen this push. We just mentioned Delaware going adult use. And then we see a push for decriminalization at the local level. In certain states like Texas and even Florida, they've tried to preempt local governments. But big news, the city of Reading, Pennsylvania, which has a population of around 95,000 people, their city council has approved the low-level marijuana decriminalization. So the ordinance passed by a 5-2 vote this past Monday and imposes civil fines rather than criminal penalties for violations of either possession or use of up to 30 grams of marijuana. Under state law, marijuana possession is classified as a criminal misdemeanor in Pennsylvania and punishable by jail time. With 30 grams, I mean, in Florida, 20 grams to get you a felony. So the fact that Pennsylvania, Reading, Pennsylvania, shout out to their city council there. Numerous other Pennsylvania cities, including Erie, Harrisburg, Philadelphia, and Pittsburgh, have also enacted similar ordinances. And since 2018, nearly 90,000 Pennsylvanians have been arrested for violating state marijuana laws. Over 85% of those arrests were for simple marijuana possession. So shout out to the city council there in Reading, Pennsylvania for moving policy forward. Now, why are people and why are politicians adopting these policies? Why is there pushback? Well, let's talk about the science of it. A recent analysis that has been published in the journal Addiction shows that the passage of adult use marijuana legalization in California has been associated with sustained decreases in alcohol consumption. Researchers affiliated with the University of California, San Francisco, and the healthcare provider Kaiser Permanente assessed trends in self-reported alcohol consumption among Northern Californians prior and following the voters' decision to legalize marijuana. California legalized marijuana for adult use in 2016. The study participants were Kaiser Permanente patients who underwent annual screenings for alcohol use during visits with their primary care doctors. Investigators reviewed data for over 3.5 million adults over a 4-year period. And researchers identified sustained declines in participants' weekly drinking patterns, as well as how and often they engage in heavy episodic drinking following legalization. Declines were most pronounced among those ages 35 to 49. Shout out to millennials for adopting pot instead of becoming alcoholics. Declines were less pronounced among those ages 21 to 34 and among those 35 and over. The study's authors concluded that cannabis policy changes in California appear linked to age-specific changes in alcohol use, with moderate reductions in particularly among middle-aged adults. So, when we talk about the powers that be not wanting this to happen, the alcohol industry definitely doesn't want this to happen. And let's look at some more medical studies coming out. Survey data published in the journal Academia Medicine show that patients with inflammatory bowel disease, IBD, including Crohn's disease and ulcerative colitis, are frequently report using cannabis to manage their symptoms. Investigators affiliated with Case Western Reserve School of Medicine surveyed 93 IBD patients regarding their use of either cannabis or CBD products. And among those participants who acknowledged consuming cannabis, most said it mitigated their IBD-related pain, stress, and anxiety. And many patients also reported using CBD oil products. However, they did not perceive them as effective as full-spectrum cannabis. 34% of patients reported decreasing their opioid consumption when using either cannabis or CBD products, finding that it is consistent with prior data. Now you got the pharmaceutical industries not wanting to do this legally. So when we talk about where there's money behind policy and why we're not moving as fast as we should, why there's other things like psychedelics advancing faster than cannabis, it's not a big shocker. Another story, which I think is important to talk about, is a survey data that's been published in the journal Brain Sciences show that a significant percentage of patients undergoing opioid maintenance therapy acknowledge consuming cannabis to ease their withdrawal symptoms and drug cravings. German researchers affiliated with the University of Munich actually surveyed 128 opioid use disorder patients receiving opioid maintenance therapy. 41% of respondents reported using cannabis. Of those, 59% said they did so to suppress cravings for other controlled substances. 39% said they used cannabis to suppress opioid withdrawal symptoms. And these findings are consistent with prior studies involving opioid-dependent subjects. Look, you got big pharma wanting to make sure that cannabis doesn't get legal. You got big alcohol and big tobacco not wanting it to happen. You have the prison industry and the private prisons. You have BlackRock, which has a major equity in the private prison industry. You have Geo Group hiring lobbyists, and these same lobbyists are now being hired at the state level by the medical marijuana treatment centers and the multi-state operators, all to keep cannabis from becoming an open market, from becoming a product that is widely used, available, and cheap, which it has always been, because folks want to make a profit on it. And the sad part about all of it is that people are still going to jail despite it being legal. There are still people being put in jail and sitting in cages for trying to pay their bills with weed money, while there are people making millions of dollars on investments and these multi-state operators making millions of dollars trying to pay their bills with weed money. So all in all, legalize it, become a member of NORML, become a member of Suncoast NORML. Go ahead and visit our website, suncoastnormal.org. Click that donate button. We need your support. Hit the like and subscribe button if you're watching on YouTube. Share this across social media. Each and every Sunday, we're going to continue to bring you amazing guests, folks in the cannabis industry who are doing big things and doing it ethically, like Pete. We're going to continue to bring you great guests who are policy movers and shakers, like members of Congress that we've had on the show, folks running for office. And in the coming weeks and months, we're going to have politicians coming on board who want to hear from you and who also want to get your vote in order to change public policy. Look, elections matter. It's the one thing we have in this country they haven't taken away yet is our right to vote. Even though they make it harder and harder each and every year, they make it harder and harder to put things on the ballot as citizens. But we still have that one thing that people are scared of, and that's our voice. Don't be afraid to use it. Speak up, speak out, and we'll catch you next week in the rotation.
Hell yeah.
Bye. Oh, and one more thing before we sign off. We actually have a back-to-school supply drive. This is the last week to get it done. Carlos, if you flash that graphic, you can come in to Chillum, any Chillum location, whether in St. Pete or in Ybor City, and we're accepting backpacks and school supplies. So please drop them off. We're going to be out August 9th distributing these. So you have until August 8th. So by Friday this week, drop them off at Chillum so we can get them to the kids. Remember that NORML loves to give back.
And anything else? You got anything to say, Pete? Anybody?
Rubber baby buggy bumpers.
Hey, smoke weed every day.